My sister had been dead for 6 days when her attorney told us she had a son, not a stepson, not a godson, a biological son, a 27-year-old man none of us had ever heard of. His name was Owen Mercer. And according to Evelyn's will, he was about to inherit everything she owned. The house on Willow Lane, her publishing company, her investments, the royalties from 12 best-selling novels, and a sealed cedar box she had kept hidden in a bank vault for almost 3 decades. My name is Nora Caldwell. I was 39 years old when my older sister died. And until that morning, I thought I knew every important chapter of her life. Evelyn was 7 years older than me. She had never married. She had never brought a serious boyfriend home. Whenever relatives asked why she had no children, she would smile and say she had enough fictional characters keeping her awake at night. I believed her. We all did. Evelyn had built a successful career writing historical mysteries under the name E.M. Caldwell. Her books were full of missing heirs, forged documents, and families destroyed by secrets. After her death, I realized she had not been inventing those stories from nothing. She had been writing around the truth she was too afraid to tell. Evelyn died on a wet Thursday night in October. Her car went through a guardrail on Briar Ridge Road and fell nearly 40 feet into a wooded ravine. The police said she had probably lost control in the rain. There were no witnesses. No other vehicles appeared on the nearest traffic camera. Her death was ruled an accident before we had even buried her. I accepted that explanation because grief makes simple answers feel merciful. 6 days later, our family gathered inside the office of Evelyn's attorney, Jonathan Reed. Our mother, Claire, sat beside me. She was 68 and looked smaller than she had at the funeral. She kept twisting Evelyn's handkerchief between her fingers. Our father, Henry, had died from a heart attack 9 years earlier. My mother's younger brother, Robert Hale, sat across from us. Uncle Robert was 60-3. He had managed our family's legal affairs for as long as I could remember. He was not an attorney, but he had worked as the financial administrator for my father's construction company and later helped Evelyn establish her publishing business. He had always seemed dependable, quiet, practical, the person everyone trusted when there were documents to sign or numbers to understand. My husband, Ben, waited outside with our 12-year-old daughter, Lily. Evelyn's will named only immediate blood relatives, so Jonathan had asked that the first reading remain private. At least that was what we thought. Jonathan looked uncomfortable before he opened the folder. Evelyn revised her will 11 weeks ago, he said. My mother frowned. She told me her will hadn't changed in years. This version was signed, witnessed, and notarized. There is also a recorded statement confirming she was mentally competent and acting without coercion. Jonathan turned the first page. I expected Evelyn to leave the house to me and establish a trust for Lily. We had discussed it once after our father died. Instead, Jonathan read a sentence that made the room feel suddenly airless. I leave the entirety of my estate, excluding the personal gifts listed in Appendix A, to my biological son, Owen James Mercer. My mother stopped twisting the handkerchief. Uncle Robert leaned forward. What did you say? Jonathan repeated the sentence. I stared at him. There must be a mistake. There is no mistake. My sister didn't have a son. Jonathan's eyes moved toward my mother, according to the accompanying records. She did. My mother stood so quickly that her chair struck the wall. No, it was not the voice of someone hearing an impossible claim. It was the voice of someone hearing a buried truth spoken aloud. I looked at her. Mom. She shook her head. No, that child died. The room went silent. I felt something cold move through me. What child? My mother pressed a hand against her mouth. Uncle Robert stood and took her arm. Claire is grieving. She doesn't know what she's saying. She pulled away from him. Evelyn's baby, she whispered. They told us he died. I could barely understand the words. You knew Evelyn had been pregnant. My mother started crying. She was 18. Your father said you were too young to remember. You were 11, and we sent you to stay with Aunt Marjorie for the summer. I remembered that summer. I remembered being angry because no one explained why I had to leave. When I came home, Evelyn was thinner. Quieter. She stopped swimming with me. She wore loose sweaters even though the weather was still warm. I had assumed she was grieving over her boyfriend, Julian Cross, who had disappeared from town several months earlier. Now fragments of memory shifted into a shape I had never seen. Where is Owen? Uncle Robert demanded. Jonathan glanced at the clock. He was invited to attend. He should be arriving shortly. Invited by whom? By Evelyn. Robert's face hardened. Evelyn is dead. She left written instructions, as if the moment had been rehearsed. Someone knocked on the office door. Jonathan's assistant opened it. The young man who entered was tall and lean. His dark hair was damp from the rain, and he wore a charcoal gray coat over a blue shirt. He looked nervous. Then he raised his eyes. They were gray-blue, exactly like Evelyn's. I had seen those eyes across breakfast tables, in family photographs and beside hospital beds. For one impossible second, I felt as if my sister had returned wearing someone else's face. The young man looked around the room. I'm Owen Mercer. I received a letter asking me to come here. My mother made a broken sound. Owen turned toward her. Confused. Jonathan asked him to sit. He remained standing. I think someone owes me an explanation. The letter said Evelyn Caldwell was my biological mother. My shock deepened. You didn't know. I was adopted when I was 3 days old. My parents never hid that from me, but the adoption was closed. I was told my biological mother had chosen not to be identified. He removed an envelope from his coat. I knew Evelyn, but she never told me she was my mother. I stared at him. You knew my sister. For almost 2 years, Owen explained that he was a high school history teacher in a town 70 miles away. 2 years earlier, Evelyn had contacted the school about funding a student writing program. She became a volunteer mentor, visiting once a month and helping his students create oral history projects. She said she liked the way I taught, he said. She helped us build a small library. We had coffee a few times, but I thought she was just being kind. His voice tightened. 3 weeks ago, she asked me to meet her here on November 4th. She said she needed to tell me something about my adoption. Then I heard she had died. November 4th was the date. Printed on Evelyn's letter, the date of the will reading. Evelyn had planned to tell Owen the truth herself. Her death had taken that chance away. Jonathan placed 3 items on the table. The first was a certified DNA report. The second was Owen's original birth record, which named Evelyn Marie Caldwell as his mother. The father's name had been left blank. The third was a small black memory card sealed inside an evidence envelope. The DNA test was conducted 4 months ago, Jonathan said. Evelyn and Mr. Mercer were confirmed as biological mother and son with a probability greater than 99.9%. When stared at the report, she tested my DNA without telling me. She did not, Jonathan said. You submitted your DNA to a genealogy service last year. Owen nodded slowly. My students were researching migration patterns. Some of us participated in the Ancestry Project. Evelyn submitted her own sample after receiving information suggesting you might be related. The service identified a parent-child match. She then contacted you through the company's protected messaging system and asked whether you would consent to a legally verified test. Owen's expression changed. I remember. The message came from someone using the initials E and they said they were researching a closed adoption. I agreed, but the clinic never told me the person's identity. Evelyn paid for both parties to remain anonymous until the results were certified. My mother sank back into her chair. She found him. Uncle Robert reached for the birth record. Jonathan covered it with his hand. That document stays with me. Robert's eyes narrowed. If the boy was legally adopted, he has no automatic claim to Evelyn's estate. He does not need an automatic claim, Jonathan replied. Evelyn named him directly. This could be fraud. The will was recorded. The DNA was independently verified. There is no reasonable question about Evelyn's intention. Robert turned toward Owen. How much did you know about her money? Owen looked offended. Nothing. I didn't even know she owned a publishing company until I read her obituary. You expect us to believe that? I stood between them. My sister just died. This is not the time to accuse anyone. Robert looked at me as if I had betrayed him. Then Jonathan said there was one more instruction. Evelyn had recorded a video to be played only after Owen. My mother and I were together. He inserted the memory card into a laptop. The screen remained dark for several seconds. Then my sister appeared. She was sitting in her study at Willow Lane. Her hair was pulled back, and there were dark circles beneath her eyes. She looked frightened, but her voice was steady. If you're watching this, she said, then either I lost my courage again, or someone made certain I could not tell you the truth myself. Uncle Robert stopped breathing. Evelyn looked directly into the camera. Owen, I am your mother. I did not abandon you. She paused, fighting tears. I was told you died less than an hour after you were born. Owen lowered his head. My mother began to sob. Evelyn continued. I discovered the truth 2 years ago. Your adoption was arranged without my legal consent. The signature on the surrender document is not mine. Robert rose from his chair. This is absurd. Jonathan paused the video. Sit down. Robert, I will not sit here while a dead woman destroys this family with delusions. Evelyn's frozen face remained on the screen behind him. Jonathan's voice became colder. You should stay. Because she named you in the next sentence. Robert stared at him. Jonathan resumed the recording. My uncle, Robert Hale, arranged the adoption, Evelyn said. He was paid $25,000 by the agency that placed my son.
Uncle Robert moved toward the laptop. I stepped in front of him. For the first time in my life, I was afraid of him. That is a lie, he said. Your sister was mentally unstable after the birth. Owen looked at him. You said the baby died? Robert ignored him. He turned to my mother. Claire, tell them. Evelyn was medicated. She was confused. My mother could not look at him. I saw a death certificate. A death certificate I gave you because that was what the hospital provided. Evelyn's recorded voice continued behind us. The original birth record identifies me as Owen's mother. The death certificate my parents received belongs to an unnamed male infant born at the same hospital 12 hours earlier. Robert changed the identification number on the copy he gave them. Jonathan displayed both documents side by side. The identification numbers differed by 1 digit. On the surface, it could have been dismissed as a clerical error, but Evelyn had found the hospital's archived delivery log. The unnamed infant had been born to a different woman. Her baby had died from severe respiratory complications before Evelyn even arrived at the hospital. Owen had been born healthy at 6:14 the following morning. His footprints were still recorded beside Evelyn's name. Owen stared at the tiny black impressions. Those marks were the first proof of his existence inside our family. Robert said nothing. Evelyn explained the rest. At 18, she had been in love with Julian Cross, a 19-year-old apprentice carpenter who worked for our father. Julian came from a poor family. My grandfather considered him unsuitable, but our father had liked him and planned to give him a permanent job. When Evelyn discovered she was pregnant, she told Julian first, he promised to marry her. 2 days later, he disappeared. Everyone believed he had run away. He did not answer Evelyn's letters or calls. His mother claimed she had not heard from him. Months later, Evelyn gave birth at St. Catherine's Hospital. My father waited outside the delivery room my mother stayed with. Evelyn. Robert arrived shortly after the birth and said there had been an emergency. Nurse injected Evelyn with a sedative. When she woke, Robert told her the baby had stopped breathing. There was no funeral. Robert claimed the hospital had arranged a private burial because of the child's condition. My parents were devastated, but they believed him. Robert had recently begun handling paperwork for a private adoption agency called New Horizons Family Services. The agency specialized in placing infants with wealthy couples. It closed in 2004 after its director died, and most of its physical records were supposedly destroyed in a warehouse flood. Evelyn believed her son was dead for 25 years. Then, 2 years before her death, She received an anonymous envelope. Inside was a copy of Owen's birth record and a photograph of Robert standing beside the director of New Horizons. Written on the back were 7 words. Your baby lived. Ask who was paid. Evelyn began investigating quietly. She told no one, because she did not know whom she could trust. Video ended with instructions to open the cedar box. Jonathan retrieved it from a secured cabinet. The box was dark brown, scratched at the corners, and sealed. With a narrow brass lock, he gave the key to Owens. Hands trembled as he opened it. Inside were 27 birthday letters, one for every year of his life. Some envelopes were yellowed with age. Evelyn had started writing them when she still believed her baby was dead. The first was addressed simply, "To my little boy, wherever souls go." Every year on his birthday, she wrote about the life she imagined he might have lived. His first steps, his first day of school, learning to drive, falling in love. She knew none of it had happened the way she imagined, but writing those letters had kept him alive in her heart. The final 2. Letters were different. They were addressed to Owen by name. He opened the most recent one. I watched him read the first few lines, then he covered his face. No one spoke while he cried. My mother whispered, "May I see one?" Owen hesitated before giving her the first letter. She held it as if it were something sacred. "I should have protected her," she said. Robert's patience broke. "You were there, Claire. If this happened, you allowed it." My mother looked up. "You told me my grandson was dead." "I told you what I had been told. Then why did the agency pay you?" "It was a consulting fee? For selling a baby?" Robert grabbed his coat. Jonathan stopped him at the door. "You are free to leave." But Evelyn submitted copies of the evidence to the district attorney before her death. For the first time, fear appeared on Robert's face. "What evidence?" Jonathan did not answer. Robert left without another word. The room felt contaminated after he was gone. Owen closed the cedar box. "I don't want her money." Jonathan leaned back in his chair. "You do not have to make any decision. Today, my parents gave me everything I needed. I'm not taking a dead woman's house from her family." I looked at him. "You are her family." The words came out before I had time to think. Owen's eyes met mine. We were strangers, but something in his face belonged to my childhood. The slight crease beside his mouth when he tried not to cry, the way he pressed his thumb against the side of his index finger when he was anxious. Evelyn had done exactly the same thing. "My sister wanted you to have what was hers," I said. "Whatever happened, that wasn't your fault." Owen glanced at my mother. Did she hate me? My mother's face collapsed. "No, she loved you before she ever saw you. She screamed for you when they took her from the delivery room." That was the first honest answer my mother gave him. It was also the moment Owen stopped trying to leave. That afternoon, we went to Evelyn's house. Willow Lane felt unchanged. Her coffee cup was still beside the kitchen sink. A half-finished manuscript rested on her desk. Her gardening shoes stood near the back door. It felt impossible that someone could own these things simply because she was gone. Owen walked slowly through the rooms. He stopped in the hallway, where framed book covers hung beside family photographs. There were pictures of me, my parents, and Lily. None of Owen. At least, not openly. In Evelyn's study, he noticed a photograph of students holding books outside a high school library. Owen stood in the center of the group. "She kept this?" I nodded. "She was proud of you." We searched the study for the evidence Evelyn had mentioned. Her desk drawers contained research notes about New Horizons, copies of hospital records, and a list of 11 women who had given birth at St. Catherine's between 1988 and 2001. Besides 6 names, Evelyn had written the same word, deceased, beside 4 others. She had written, believed infant died. My sister had begun to suspect. Owen was not the only stolen child. At the bottom of the page was a 12th name, Evelyn Marie Caldwell. Owen sat in her desk chair. She knew for 2 years. Why didn't she tell me? I had wondered the same thing. The final letter provided part of the answer. Evelyn knew Owen's adoptive mother, Susan Mercer, was dying from ovarian cancer. Susan had spent years fearing Owen's biological family might appear and convince him that his adoption had been based on a crime she had known about. She and her husband, David, had not purchased a child. They had paid ordinary agency fees and had been told Evelyn had voluntarily surrendered him. Evelyn contacted Susan privately after discovering the truth. Susan begged for time, not because she wanted to keep, Owen from Evelyn, but because she was afraid the revelation would poison the last months of her life and make her son question whether she deserved to be called his mother, Evelyn agreed to wait until after Susan died. She did not want her first act as Owen's biological mother to be taking his other mother away. Susan died 5 months before Evelyn's car crash. After the funeral, Evelyn tried several times to tell Owen. Each time she lost her courage. Finally, she set November 4th as the date. She revised her will in case something happened before then. But Evelyn's letter contained another sentence that troubled me. I have waited too long, but lately Robert has been watching me. If I fail to arrive, do not assume I changed my mind. I called the detective who had investigated Evelyn's crash, Detective Mara. Singh met us at the police station the following morning. She listened without interrupting as we explained the adoption, the payments, and Evelyn's warning. Then she examined the copy of Evelyn's letter. Was this available when we investigated the crash? No, I said. We found it yesterday. Detective Singh told us that the weather and road conditions supported an accident. But one detail had bothered the mechanic who inspected Evelyn's car. The left rear brake line had ruptured. Because the vehicle had been badly damaged in the fall, the rupture was originally considered a result of the crash. If someone cut it before she drove, Owen said. Could you tell? Possibly. A clean cut can look different from impact damage. But after rain, fire department extraction, and 6 days in an impound lot, the evidence may have deteriorated. She reopened the case for review. That evening, someone entered Evelyn's house. I was asleep in the guest room when I heard glass breaking downstairs. Ben and Lily were at our home. Owen had returned to his father's house. Locked the bedroom door and called. 911. Then I heard footsteps in the study drawers opened paper. Scattered. The intruder was searching for something when police arrived. The back door was open. The intruder had escaped. Through the garden, nothing valuable had been taken. Evelyn's laptop was untouched. Her jewelry remained in the bedroom. Only one thing was missing. The list of women connected to New Horizons. Uncle Robert told police he had been home all night. He even had proof. A security camera showed his car in his driveway from 7 in the evening until morning. But Detective Singh discovered that Robert's car was not the only vehicle he used. He also had access to a white utility van, registered to our father's old construction company. Ew. Traffic camera recorded that van too. Streets from Evelyn's house 20 minutes before the break-in. When confronted, Robert claimed an employee had borrowed it. The company had no employees. It had been legally inactive for 8 years. Detective Singh obtained a warrant to search the van. Under the passenger seat, investigators found a small fragment of blue glass. It matched Evelyn's broken study window. Robert was arrested for burglary, but the larger case was only beginning. Robert refused to answer questions about the adoption agency. His attorney insisted the burglary was a misunderstanding. Robert claimed he had entered Evelyn's house because he believed she possessed confidential financial records belonging to the family company. That explanation failed for one simple reason. He had broken a window even though he still carried a key. Someone who believed he had a legal right to enter would not need to make the crime look like a random break-in. Detective Singh believed Robert had wanted us to think a stranger had searched the study. The missing list was recovered 2 days later from a storm drain behind his office. Water had damaged the paper, but forensic technicians could still read most of the names. Evelyn had written notes on the reverse side. One note included a storage unit number, Unit 214 at North County Storage. The rental agreement was registered to a company called Hale Administrative Services. Robert owned that company. Police searched the unit. Inside were 32 sealed boxes from New Horizons Family Services. The records had never been destroyed in a flood. Robert had taken them when the agency closed. The files documented at least 14 illegal adoptions. Some mothers had been told their infants died. Others had been pressured into signing documents while heavily medicated. In 3 cases, signatures had been forged. The adoptive families appeared to have believed the placements were legal. Payments from those families went to New Horizons. Additional payments were transferred into private accounts controlled by the agency director, and Robert Owen's file contained a copy of Evelyn's forged surrender form. It also contained a handwritten note from Robert. Father politically exposed. Family requires discretion. Mother not to receive contact. My father had been preparing to run for city council that year. Robert had used our family's fear of scandal as a business opportunity. But there was one fact we still could not explain. If Robert had wanted to hide Evelyn's pregnancy to protect my father, why had he made Julian Cross disappear? We found the answer in a file labeled JC. It contained 3 letters Julian had written to Evelyn. All had been opened. None had been delivered. The first letter said Julian's mother had become seriously ill in another state. He had left town for 2 weeks to bring her home. The second said Robert had fired him and threatened to have him arrested for stealing company materials if he returned. The third was dated 10 days before Owen's birth. Julian wrote that he had saved enough money for a small apartment. He begged Evelyn to meet him at a bus station across the state line. At the bottom, he had written, "I don't care what your family thinks. You and our baby are my family now." Evelyn never saw those words. Robert intercepted every letter. Then he wrote to Julian, pretending to be Evelyn. The forged response said she had ended the pregnancy and never wanted to see him again. Julian believed her. Evelyn believed he had abandoned her. A single lie separated them for 27 years. Detective Singh located Julian in Oregon. He was 46, married, and the father of 2 teenage daughters. When the detective told him Evelyn had given birth to a son, he cried so hard she had to stop the interview. Julian agreed to provide DNA. The test confirmed he was Owen's biological father. Owen asked me to come with him when they met. The meeting took place in a quiet room at Jonathan's office. Julian entered carrying an old photograph. It showed Evelyn, at 17, sitting on the hood of a truck with sunlight in her hair. "I kept this," he told Owen. "It was the only thing I had left." Owen did not know whether to shake his hand or hug him. Julian did not force either. He simply sat across from his son and told the truth. He explained that he had loved Evelyn. He explained the letter he received. He admitted he should have returned and demanded to hear the words from her directly. "I was 19, he said. "I was hurt, frightened, and proud. None of that excuses the fact that I gave up too easily." Owen asked the hardest question. "If she had contacted you 2 years ago, what would you have done?" "I would have come." Julian looked at Evelyn's photograph. "I would have come that day." Owen gave him a copy of Evelyn's final letter. They did not become father and son in a single afternoon. Real relationships do not work that way, but they exchanged phone numbers. It was a beginning. While Owen confronted the father he had never known, my mother and I confronted each other. I'd spent days wondering how she could have hidden Evelyn's pregnancy from me. She finally told me everything. My grandfather had been deeply religious and obsessed with the family's reputation. When Evelyn's pregnancy became visible, he insisted she be sent away. My father refused. He kept her at home but told neighbors she had mononucleosis. My mother agreed to send me to Aunt Marjorie because she thought 11 was too young to understand. After the birth, my parents believed the baby was dead. Evelyn fell into a severe depression. Doctors advised them not to speak about the child unless she raised the subject. Over time, silence became habit, then silence became shame. After my father died, Evelyn asked my mother if she still had the baby's death certificate. My mother said she had burned it years earlier because she could not bear to see it. That was not true. She had placed it in my father's safe. She was afraid Evelyn would reopen the wound. "If you had given it to her," I said, "she might have found Owen sooner." "I know. You kept deciding what truth she was strong enough to hear." "I know." My mother did not defend herself. That made it harder to remain angry. She had not sold Owen. She had not known he lived, but she had spent decades protecting herself from guilt instead of helping her daughter face grief. Love had been present. Courage had not. Detective Singh's team re-examined Evelyn's car. A forensic mechanic removed the damaged section of the brake line. Under magnification, he found tool marks. The line had been partially cut before Evelyn drove onto Briar Ridge Road. It had not failed immediately. Each time she pressed the brake pedal, the remaining metal weakened. By the time she reached the steepest curve, the line ruptured completely. The crash had not been an accident. Phone records showed that Robert called Evelyn twice that evening. The second call lasted 4 minutes. At 8:41, Evelyn left her house. At 8:53, a camera at a gas station recorded Robert's white utility van following her car. Toward Briar Ridge Road, Robert had left his personal car at home to create an alibi. He claimed he had gone out for coffee. There was no coffee in the van. There was, however, a pair of work gloves in the storage compartment. Microscopic residue on the gloves matched material from Evelyn's brake line. The evidence was strong, But Detective Singh still needed a motive connected directly to the night Evelyn died. We found it inside her unfinished manuscript. The novel was titled The 14th Cradle. At first, it appeared to be another fictional mystery about a rural hospital and a missing infant. Then, Owen noticed that the chapter headings were dates. Each date matched a birth in the New Horizons files. The first letter of each chapter formed a message. Robert has the records. The final completed chapter described a woman meeting a district attorney at 9 o'clock on a Thursday morning. Evelyn's calendar showed an appointment with Assistant District Attorney Melissa Grant on the morning after her crash. She had planned to deliver the original evidence. Robert had learned about the meeting. We discovered how through Evelyn's email account, her messages were being automatically forwarded to an address registered under Hale Administrative Services. Robert had installed the forwarding rule years earlier. When he helped set up Evelyn's business accounts, he had been reading her correspondence ever since. He knew she found Owen. He knew about the DNA test. He knew she planned to expose the illegal adoptions. And he knew that once the financial records were examined, investigators would discover something beyond the agency payments. Robert had also stolen from Evelyn. Over 16 years, he had transferred nearly $900,000 from her publishing company into fake vendor accounts. Evelyn discovered the theft while investigating the adoption records. Her meeting with the district attorney would have exposed everything: the illegal adoptions, the forged signatures, the stolen money, and the son he had taken from her. Robert was charged with Evelyn's murder, evidence tampering, fraud, forgery, trafficking in children, and multiple financial crimes. He continued to insist he had protected our family. During a recorded jail call, he told my mother, "Henry would have lost his business. Evelyn would have ruined all of you." My mother answered, "You ruined us when you decided a child was something you could sell." She never accepted another call. Yet one mystery remained. Who had sent Evelyn the anonymous envelope that led her to Owen? The answer came from a retired nurse named Teresa Bell. Teresa had been 23 when Owen was born. She worked the night shift at St. Catherine's Hospital. She remembered Evelyn crying for her baby. She also remembered Robert speaking privately with the attending physician and an adoption representative. Teresa saw Owen carried into a side nursery even though his medical record showed no complications. The following morning, his identification bracelet had been removed. Teresa questioned a supervisor and was told not to interfere. 2 weeks later, she lost her job for an alleged medication error she had not committed. For years, she suspected what had happened, but had no proof. When New Horizons closed, a former employee gave her copies of several records, including Owen's birth certificate. Teresa was frightened. Some people involved in the agency still held influential positions. She waited until the director and attending physician were dead. Then she sent the envelope to Evelyn. "Why didn't she include her name?" I asked. "Because she was ashamed," Owen said quietly. "The same reason everyone stayed silent." Teresa agreed to testify. Her testimony connected the hospital, the agency, and Robert. It also gave my sister something the official records could not: a witness who remembered her holding Owen. Teresa said Evelyn had touched his left cheek and whispered, "Hello, my beautiful boy." Less than an hour later, Robert told her he was dead. When Owen heard that, he asked Teresa to repeat it. She did. He wrote the words on the back of Evelyn's photograph. They were the first words his mother had ever spoken to him. Robert's trial began 14 months after Evelyn's death. By then, investigators had identified 12 surviving people who had been adopted through fraudulent New Horizons placements. DNA testing reunited 7 of them with biological relatives. For some, the reunions brought joy. For others, they brought anger, grief, and questions no court could fully answer. One biological mother had died believing her daughter lived somewhere in the world. Another had spent 34 years believing her baby died in her arms, only to discover the infant she held had not been hers. The conspiracy was larger than Evelyn had imagined, but Robert had been its last living organizer. His attorney argued there was no eyewitness to Evelyn's murder. He claimed the residue on the gloves came from maintenance work. He claimed the van followed Evelyn by coincidence. He claimed her brake line had been damaged by corrosion. The forensic evidence contradicted. Him, so did the emails, so did the money, and then Jonathan. Reed produced one final recording. Evelyn had installed a small security camera in her garage after noticing that tools had been moved. The camera was not connected to her home computer. It uploaded footage directly to a protected cloud account Jonathan had discovered during the estate. Review. At 4:12 on the afternoon of Evelyn's death, the footage showed Robert entering the garage. He used his old key. He crouched beside the rear wheel of Evelyn's car for 3 minutes. When he stood, he was holding a pair of metal cutters. He looked directly toward the camera without seeing it. That image destroyed his defense. The jury found him guilty of first-degree murder and every major charge connected to Owen's adoption and Evelyn's finances. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, followed by additional sentences for fraud and kidnapping-related offenses. Robert showed no remorse. When the judge asked whether he wanted to speak, he said everything he had done was intended to preserve the Caldwell family. Owen sat beside me in the courtroom. He whispered, "He still thinks a family is a name instead of people." He was right. Robert had protected a reputation by destroying the human beings who carried it. After the trial, Owen accepted Evelyn's inheritance, not because he wanted to replace us, not because money could repay what had been stolen. He accepted it because refusing would have meant allowing Robert's final lie to stand, the lie that Owen had never belonged to Evelyn. Owen kept Willow Lane but did not move in. Immediately, for several months, he visited on weekends. Sometimes, he stayed in Evelyn's study and read her letters. Other times he left after 10 minutes because the grief was too heavy. He gave me the personal belongings named in the will. Evelyn's grandmother's ring, her handwritten recipes, the music box we had fought over as children. He established a trust for my daughter, Lily, exactly as Evelyn had requested. In Appendix A, he also used part of the estate to create the Evelyn Caldwell Family Records Foundation. The foundation helped people affected by falsified birth. Records and illegal adoptions access DNA testing, counseling, and legal assistance. He hired Teresa Bell as an honorary advisor. She refused a salary, but attended the foundation's first public event. My mother apologized to Owen more than once. At first, he did not know what to do with her apology. She was his biological grandmother, but she was also a stranger whose decisions had helped keep Evelyn's pain hidden. He did not forgive her. Immediately, he asked questions. Some answers hurt, some embarrassed her. She answered anyway. That honesty became the beginning of their relationship. Owen's adoptive father, David, came to Willow Lane the following spring. I was nervous before meeting him. I did not know whether he would see us as people trying to take his son. Instead, David carried a box of family photographs, Owen as a baby asleep on his chest, Owen on his first bicycle, Owen missing his front teeth, Owen graduating from college. "These belong here too," David said. He placed the photographs beside Evelyn's cedar box. My mother cried when she saw them. She thanked David for loving her grandson. David answered, "He was never difficult to love." Owen did not have to choose between the family that raised him and the family that lost him. He was allowed to belong to both. Julian visited several times that year. His wife, Rebecca, came with him. So did his daughters, Maya and Elise. They were nervous about meeting the adult brother they had never known. Lily solved the problem by asking everyone to play a board game. Within an hour, they were arguing over rules like cousins who had known each other for years. Not every moment was easy. Owen sometimes became angry when he noticed a feature he shared with Evelyn. Julian carried guilt for believing the forged letter. My mother grieved the grandson she could have known. I grieved the sister I thought I understood, but we stopped protecting each other with silence. That was the promise we made. No more secret pain, disguised as kindness. No more deciding that truth was too dangerous for someone else to hear. 6 months after Robert's conviction, Jonathan called me. He had found an additional instruction in Evelyn's publishing contract. Her final novel was to be released only after the criminal case ended. The manuscript was complete. The unfinished copy in her study had been a decoy. The real manuscript had been stored with her publisher. The book was titled The Sun in the Cedar Box. It was not a direct account of Owen's life, but the dedication left no doubt. For my son, who was never unwanted, never forgotten, and never truly lost, Owen asked me to attend the publication event with him. Hundreds of readers filled the old city library. Most knew only that Evelyn's final novel had been inspired by a family secret. The legal details remained private too. Protect the other victims. Before Owen read the dedication aloud, he looked toward the empty chair we had reserved in the front row. A copy of Evelyn's book rested on the seat. My mother spent most of her life believing I had died, he told the audience. When she learned I was alive, she was afraid that telling me the truth would destroy the family I already had. He paused. She was wrong about one thing. The truth did not destroy my family. The people who concealed it nearly did. The room became silent. Owen continued. I wish she had told me sooner. I wish we had been given one honest day as mother and son. But I know now that every visit she made to my school, every book she placed in my classroom, and every question she asked about my life was her way of standing close to me while she gathered the courage to say who she was. He opened the cedar box. The 27 letters were inside. I cannot change the years we lost, but I can make sure her love is no longer hidden. After the event, Owen gave me a letter I had never seen. Evelyn had addressed it to me. Nora, if you are reading this, then you know about Owen. You may feel that I did not trust you. The truth is more complicated. I trusted you with every part of my life, except the part I could not bear to lose a second time. When I found him, I was happy and terrified. He had a father who raised him, a mother he adored, and a life that did not contain an empty space shaped like me. I was afraid that telling him would be an act of love for me and an act of cruelty toward him. Perhaps I waited too long. If I cannot explain that to him myself, please do not ask him to forgive me. Just tell him he was loved before he had a name, and please forgive Mom if you can. She failed me in ways that mattered, but she was also deceived. Do not let Robert's choices turn grief into another inheritance. You were the best part of being my sister. I love you, Evelyn. I read the letter twice. Then I handed it to Owen. He read it beneath the old maple tree behind Willow Lane. When he finished, he folded it carefully and returned it to me. She thought I didn't have an empty space for her, he said. Did you? I didn't know what it was. But yes, the following October, on the first anniversary of Evelyn's death, we gathered at Willow Lane. Owen planted a young cedar tree near the garden. David helped him steady it. Julian filled the hole with soil. My mother poured the first bucket of water. Lily placed a small brass plaque at its base. It carried only Evelyn's name and the line from her final book. Nothing loved is ever completely lost. We did not pretend the tree erased what happened. It did not return Evelyn. It did not give Owen his childhood with her. It did not restore Julian's stolen chance to become a young father. It did not free my mother from regret, but it marked the place where secrecy ended. Today, 3 years later, Owen still teaches history. He lives at Willow Lane and writes an Evelyn study. He has begun working on a book about the families affected by New Horizons. With their permission, he calls David Dad. He calls Julian by his first name. Although once when Julian was leaving after Christmas dinner, I heard Owen accidentally call him Dad too. Neither of them mentioned it. My mother keeps one of Owen's childhood photographs. Beside her bed, Lily calls him Uncle Owen, and I no longer describe him as the son my sister never told us about. He is my nephew. He is Evelyn's son. He was not created by the revelation of a will. He had existed all along, the will only forced the rest of us to see him. I used to believe inheritance meant money, houses and objects passed from the dead to the living. Evelyn taught me that we inherit other things. 2. Silence, fear, guilt, unanswered questions. But we can also inherit courage. We can take the truth someone died, trying to reveal and carry it the rest of the way. My sister's will left everything to a son she never told us about, but the most important thing she left him was not her house or her fortune, was proof that he had never been abandoned. 27 letters, a cedar box, and a final truth powerful enough to bring him home.